Now, if you've seen last episode, you'll know part of the college story, but in today's episode I want to talk about my college life because I think it's pretty unique. I think most people wouldn't have a college life as unique as mine. Quick summary is that I failed college, and I'd given some tips in the previous episode. And the thing is, it's kind of crazy if you think about it, because, you know, unlike most people, I wasn't really drinking that much. I wasn't really doing the sort of things that you would expect in a college life. And honestly, looking back now, it is so weird. But I've been blessed with a very unique environment for this episode. I don't even know why. It wasn't forecast to snow like this, but look at the aesthetic. By the way, look at that. Come on. I guess you can also see the camera quality is improved. You see, last episode, I kind of discovered that I hadn't updated my phone in like 3 years, which probably isn't a good thing. But let's get right into it. Now, I got to take you back, right? We're going back to 2023, right? Back to 2023, picking the university and picking it. Now, I'm not going to say the university I picked, but long story short, we start off with Freshers Week. You know, showing up, right? You know, the first week when you're partying and you're doing all sorts of stuff, like exploring the place. Now, when I started college, the first thing was I came with my dad. My dad helped me pack and get to college. And you know, it's actually a really stressful experience when you do it for the first time, because if you miss one thing and your college is far away, well, you are screwed. Now, I mean, the college was roughly like, you know, it was more than an hour away. So as I can't drive, I don't want to inconvenience my dad, because he's probably going to have it with me. But when we arrived, I show up, and from unloading my stuff, first thing was, you know, meeting the people, right? Now, I did pick computer science, which is probably going to distort the storyline. I stayed in a flat. I did not commute. You know, luckily, no one burnt the flat down, as described by probably every other YouTuber when they talk about their college life. But long and behold, when I arrived to the flat, first off, you have to get your keys and stuff like that. And I was scared like heck. Like, I was the outsider. I felt so out of place when I showed up to the university. All right, look, you know, there was this guy. I'm not going to use real names just to, you know, respect their privacy and whatnot. But, you know, there's this guy who lived next door to me, right? He met him, you know, nice guy, given that he studies political science. Interesting pick. Anyway, this guy who studied political science, we'll call him John. Like, this guy, John, when me and my dad showed up and we were unpacking the stuff, well, I opened the fridge and he's got milk leaking. You know, my dad notices this and he tells John, and it's like, he's like, oh shoot, oh yeah, my bad. You know, because he's taken the seal off the milk. It's the strangest thing possible, that. Luckily, it didn't leak everywhere. It wasn't like a complete mess or whatever. But yeah, that was an interesting interaction. I mean, this guy, John, he went completely ballistic next door. And you're probably wondering what I mean by ballistic. This guy absolutely knew how to fuck. This guy, he just knew. He knew what was up. And he clearly wasn't scared to let everyone else know about it. His girlfriend was like this Filipino chick or whatever. It may be Indonesian. I don't know, I honestly. And these guys just went at it every night, right? Every night. And no hesitation. And bro, I'd knock on the door, bro, and they were like, I interrupted a segment. He's got his TV on at like full volume, watching. Honestly, I do not know what he was watching as well. So he's basically invited me to, you know, just to knock on the door. You know, how's things? Yeah, everything's all right. He's a nice guy, but that guy was pulling all the moves in his room. Crazy work. And, you know, the other flatmates, they're all pretty chill. You know, everyone's nice. And after everyone showed up, it was about 4 girls, 3 boys. And, you know, contrary, this might just be luck or something, but all my flatmates were fine. They were quite tidy. Everyone was good. Crazy luck, right? And the thing is, like, I was so worried I was going to get bad flatmates. Like, I feared for my life. Also, because when my dad was at university, he almost got in a fight with his flatmates, so it probably was setting the bar quite low, to be fair. But man, you know, obviously you got like the friends aspect, you know, the friendship aspect in university, in college. I know that's what people usually are quite excited for when they show up, but you know, spoiler alert, once you get to a certain age, it's pretty underwhelming. Now, after I'd unpacked and I got through everything and whatnot, my dad left, gone back home. Once I got out to explore the university environment, all of a sudden I started having the craziest plot armor. First thing that was crazy was I bumped into some people, and obviously, you know me, I'm just gonna strike up a conversation with anyone at that point because I had absolutely no fear. No fear Dundee. And they just so happened to be freshers studying computer science. And once the week started, first off, I had a flatmate who was also studying computer science in my year. Just my luck. You know, when I started, well, I didn't know what I was doing. All right, now obviously you got the cooking aspect. I didn't know how to fry chicken properly. Luckily I had a flatmate that helped deal with that. Sometimes you have to feel a bit disabled to get the high ground, you know? And right, I'm not like that typical university student that just can't cook to save their life and taking years off their life eating junk. I was able to cook. We got a puddle here. Now luckily I can make my way around the puddle this episode. I mean, look at that. Unlock the new path, come on. Oh fuck, I've jinxed it, there's another puddle. Right, okay. And then, you know, we move on to the lecturer side, the teaching side. First week, you know, obviously we have like that one lecture thing, you know, just to kind of get everyone together. I don't know how deep that is, but I'm gonna walk around actually. I'm just gonna walk. You know, sometimes you have to walk around your problems, don't walk into them. That's what you gotta do. Oh my gosh, I'm slipping here, bro. Right, let's get around here. I did not charge this before I went. I think we're gonna turn around. Beautiful view today. What a wonderful view, right? Wonderful view. I'm going in, Freshers Week. I meet some new people, right? And these people, they are as computer science as you get. You know the stereotype with computer science students that they just stay inside and they don't go outdoors. You know, outdoors. You know that stereotype? Well, I can confirm that it's actually true. Man, I hate computer science students. I actually hate them. Now, I'm going to get into why I hate them. You know, first impression, you know, they seem pretty cool. They seem pretty chill until they start talking about League of Legends. But it was all right initially. But, you know, after a few lectures when we're sitting down, you know, initially, I said this in the previous video, but initially, the first year was pretty good. But coming towards the end of the first year, you quickly learn how uninteresting these people are. They are like the most boring people I think I've ever met. I'm holding back here. These lot were so boring. And by the way, I met loads of people in that cohort, in my class, and we had like 300 students or something like that. I met a lot of people and they are so boring. So boring. Now, then again, I'm not a really computer science kind of guy, and I did pick computer science, so I guess you can kind of see who's to blame there. But when I was in the first class, initially, you get a good impression of these guys. You know, you think they're all right because first off, you don't know anything about them to an extent, and that's why, you know, you play devil's advocate. You know, I speak to a lot of people. You know, I tell them I got a YouTube channel and whatnot, so I can only imagine some of them are going to be watching this video. But, you know, the one thing I notice in college classes, and this maybe this is true for every college class, or you know, maybe this is just a generational thing, but there are so many people that are just on their phones. They're just on their phones. People, they're not engaging with anything. And you know, the thing is, you know, this might be a pretty nasty take, and this might be probably the lecturer's take, honestly, but like these guys, they look lazy. They actually look lazy. You think they're doing nothing. You know, think of it, computer science students, what's the stereotype? They just stay inside most of the time. They don't appreciate the weather, you know. There's one guy, actually my flatmate, who once I mentioned about the weather being nice, he's like, why do you talk about the weather? I'm like, bruh, we're in the fucking UK. These guys are so uninteresting. You know, I think the weather's nice. You know, it might not be good today, but these guys suck. You know, the person who put their hand up the most in all those classes, it was me, all right? I was there asking questions. I was engaged with the material. It's kind of crazy. The guy who's the most engaged with, you know, his classes just so happens to be the one who doesn't like it. You know, maybe that says something about people who go to university. Maybe they're dumb. You know, maybe people who go to college are actually dumb. I thought they were. You know, if I were to rate these guys as charisma from 1 out of 100, well, we're going 10. You know, the weird thing is like, you think that when you meet students, when you meet different people, you think that it's good if they're not rude. You know, I honestly think if these guys were just a little bit, you know, elbows out, if they were interesting people, is what I'm trying to get at. You know, there's a saying that you are like your 5 friends you hang around with. And these guys were intolerable. They were intolerable. They say nothing, and that's what makes them annoying. They're like uninterested in what you have to say. They're not engaging people. You know, when you talk to them, they're like, they don't know how to have a conversation. You know, I see them on Instagram, you know, they're in sports and whatnot. They seem interesting, and you meet them and they're just so boring. Yeah, honestly, this should just be a hate video on computer science students, right? This is what it should be, because it's valid. You know, the worst thing was people who weren't interested in computer science, I just got on with a lot better. Bro, you know, the one person I got on with really well in computer science, aside from my flatmate, bro, the one person I got on well with, he switched course the following year. Bruh. And like, obviously, you know, I wasn't a big fan of computer science. I didn't hate it, but like some of these people, man, you know, it's so strange in a way. You know, my friends back at home, even though I'm so different to them in terms of like what I do and what I like to pursue, they are so much more bright and interesting than these guys studying computer science. These guys in their dark dorm, you know, I didn't have a dark dorm. You know, when I knock on my flatmate's door, in the first year, bro, his room was dark all the time, man. And you know, I'm sitting there, right, in all my classes, doing the assignments and stuff. And you know, there's always been a brief period for me where I'm sitting and I'm thinking, I just don't see my life being like theirs. All right, I just can't. I can't see my life being like theirs. And it frustrates you, it frustrates me. It was bad. Now, another part of the college life is, you know, the part where you have eggs. Now, contrary to the popular belief, look, I'm studying computer science. I didn't have segs. Look, I'm saving my energy, right? Okay, that's what I'm doing. But in the first semester, like, my channel began to gain some momentum, which was, you know, pretty cool to see. Everyone's got that sort of, you know, everyone's drinking and whatnot, and they're doing all this sort of stuff. But, you know, I think the one thing that really kept me going during my college phase, honestly, probably making videos, you know, just to get away from these lots sometimes, man. You know, the one thing was, when I mentioned my YouTube channel, it was like the only thing they could talk about with me. You know, the conversations, they felt so one-sided at some points that you just, they make you feel out of place. I'd like to think you lot watching this video are a lot more cheery than them. Like, we'd be in lectures, and there was one other guy who would always answer some of the questions, and when he'd answer, he would answer in like the most dark tone. Like, it would be like, yeah, so you know, the SSD is you know, not moving, there's no moving parts. That was his tone when he'd answer, bro. Another thing I noticed was in our classes, after the first few weeks, they started getting a bit empty. My classes would go from like a full lobby to just no one in like just a few weeks, straight up. And the thing is, like, you can learn everything online a lot of the time. I mean, you know, you show up for the discipline, and you show up to show that you're committed. And like, for some classes I understood it, but for other classes I'm like, bruh, like, these guys, they actually give you the impression that they don't care. They actually give the impression. Then they show up to the exam and then somehow put in a good score afterwards. And I cared. All right, at the time, I cared about learning. That's not me suggesting that you should skip lectures. You have to go to all your lectures, right? But one thing I want to mention as well, and I guess this is the cherry on top of it all. Now, we had this group project, and this was in my sophomore year, second semester. We had to make some sort of software that people could use, kind of like a game or whatever. And if you watched my previous video, you'll know a little bit. But the second semester, initially I was sick for nearly 2 weeks. And you know, look, this is where the chaos begins to unravel, right? I'm not holding back when I say this. It might just be the worst luck you could actually think of. Now, by the time I'd recovered, when we had our group project, you know, there's about 8 of us in our group, and you know, everyone was nice in the group project. We all got on really well, except this one guy, and this guy from Ukraine. And when the group project kicked off, the workload and whatnot, a bit after the start of the second semester, I was sick for about a week and a bit. And when I was sick, this Ukrainian guy messages me, right? he wants to talk because I was unwell. I didn't really let the group chat know that I was unwell. I was just sick as a dog. And at this time I was getting a bit better. All right, we'll have a discussion. I'll give him the go ahead. I tell him to ring me at 4. This is where the chaos begins. I tell him to ring me at 4. Sees the message. So I'm like, okay, so he's happy to ring me at 4. Next thing this guy does is he picks up the phone and he rings me at 6. So, I'm there like, what the hell's this guy ringing me for? I'm having my fucking tea. He rings me while I'm eating and, I don't pick up because, the guy just reads my message and he just doesn't comply. Like, he just doesn't care. And then the next thing he messages is that he's given up on me. Bro, this guy, he messages literally, I give up. And I'm there and I'm like, what the fuck? I already messaged him like, oh, I'm sick. I messaged the group chat towards the end when I felt a bit better. Like, yeah, I'm not feeling a bit under the weather and whatnot. This guy messages, I give up. Now, I didn't really think much of it. Maybe he's just like, I just guess maybe he was not in a good mood. So then, I'm messaging the group chat. I'm feeling a bit better. Met up with some of the group members and I'm trying to get things on track. I'm a bit behind. Start getting some work done. And, I put a suggestion in the chat, like, just to help with organising things, like messages and whatnot. Like, it's best to message early in the day. So, everyone knows what's happening. Like, everyone can act on, getting some work done or whatnot. Because, these guys were messaging at like 10 in the evening, 11 o'clock at night, when they should be in fucking bed. But I put this suggestion in. And this guy just messages, telling me to shut the fuck up. And just out of nowhere, he messaged that to me in front of the whole group chat, by the way. Like, totally unhinged. This guy just, I don't know what this guy's problem is. Next thing he tells me to shut up. So I'm like, okay. And I'm like, right, well, this is a little bit rude. On policy worth of, working as a group project. Guys insulted me twice now. Some people in the group came up to me and said, like, they don't think it's that cool what he's saying. Like, maybe I should do something about it. So I'm like, all right. I send an email to our coach, our examiner, saying, like, this guy has just told me to shut up and all this, right? And our examiner came back, and I'm not even joking when I say this. The examiner for our project, he replies blaming me for not having emailed him sooner. And this was a few days apart. This was only a few days apart. He replies saying I should have messaged sooner and that I need to be pulling my weight more when I was sick. Right, and this was a busy time in the semester. And, I spoke to him after and I explained like what was going on and like, the fact that I was unwell and this and that. He's like, oh, it's cool. And this doesn't excuse the fact that this guy just insulted me and our examiner doesn't even condemn it. He literally just ignores the fact that he said that when I sent him that email. It's against college policy, right? If someone goes after someone else, it's policy that you do something about it, right? I spoke to my personal tutor. My personal tutor's like, I don't know, go talk to him. So a few weeks go by. I'm a bit more up to speed, but still a bit rough, still a bit rocky. And the same guy, I'm like, all right, it's not cool what he said, so I'm gonna go talk to him. I'm gonna go confront him about it, solve it like real men. I go confront him, right? And this is during like pretty 3 hours, right? This is during 3 hours, we didn't have any lectures going on at this time. I go and confront this guy. I tell him like, why did you tell me to shut up? Like, why are you trying to dismiss my efforts? And you know what he replies with? He replies with, busy at the moment. You can't talk about this. What a fucking dickhead. What a twat. This guy just straight up ignored the fact that I confronted him. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm just busy with the work, whatever. I can't talk right now. We haven't got time. Something along the lines of that. I'm like, he didn't apologize anything. I didn't ask for an apology or anything. I kind of thought, we can just talk it out. It's fine. And he just didn't apologize. And I sent another email to our coach, our examiner. I've spoke to this guy in our group project, this Ukrainian guy, the same Ukrainian guy, and he hasn't apologized anything. He's just, he's just wandered off. He's just ignored me, right? In my eyes, it's just a small dispute, and everyone has to be working together. And the examiner gets back, replies to my email. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna go talk to him. I'll do something. A few weeks after, when I was putting in the hours, like every week we had to put in like 8 hours. I was putting in the hours, and this guy comes up to me You know, this is a few weeks after our conflict's unresolved. This guy comes up to me and says, you know, you could be doing more work. You know, why don't you do more work or whatever? And I'm like, this guy, look, this is the craziest rage baiter. I don't know what his problem is, because look, everyone else in the group was fine. But this guy came up to me. I was like, why aren't you doing more work? To be fair, I was a bit slow, so it took me more time to do, you know, certain tasks or whatever. You know, I told him I was a bit slow. In general, he's like, he doesn't give a fuck. This guy literally said English is my second language and that I shouldn't have any problem with the work. Word for word, this is what this guy said. Still, I don't apologise about before, and I reminded him of that. Gets away with it. And, you know, this time I was starting to struggle a bit with the work, with the group project. And, yeah, long story short, if you've seen the last episode, basically I just became a bit cooked. And shit just did not go to plan. You know, everyone else in the group was joking about the fact that this is just an unresolved issue. And, you know, at the time it really enraged me because it felt like somehow I was at fault. You know, how was I getting the blame for some guy running his mouth all over me and just completely dismissing the fact that sometimes I'm a bit slow with my work. When I went running one day in the city centre, what have you, this guy gives the most nasty face when I go running past it. He just genuinely got the face of vinegar. Bro, I don't know what I did to upset this guy. Because I straight up, this guy had no compassion when he was speaking to people. Like, this guy didn't even apologise to me. And like, you know, he got told off by the examiner, but he didn't apologise to me. I asked for an apology. You know, I wrote an email to the examiner telling him to like get him to apologise. And he just didn't apologise. And you know, because he was doing a bit of the work, you know, he's pulling a little bit of the weight, I got the blame. You know, not to be funny, right? But this guy has just come to my country and just insulted me like as if he fucking lives there. And this guy just gets away scot-free. How has he done that then? How has he done that? You know, by the time he got the repercussions, it just didn't matter. Unreal, unhinged. Like, you cannot make that up. And that is just the cherry on the top. You know, I briefly wondered why this guy's country's in a war. And I'm kind of starting to see why now. No diplomacy with this guy whatsoever. But what can you do? But what can you do? And that was my college life. So if you want to hear more stories like this, like, subscribe, share this video around, consider checking out my other videos. And that was why my college life was awful. Thanks for watching and take care.